welcome to our second annual State of the Towns. This was an event we had a lot of fun with last year. The supervisors were kind enough to come again this year, and we're really hoping it's something we can do annually. My name's Lisa Pizzurro. I am a vice president with the League of Women Voters of Bedford-Lewisboro-North Salem. And before we get started, I just want to quickly say a word about the League. We're a local chapter of a national organization. This is a busy time of year for us. Tomorrow our voter service activities really rev up. We are participating in National Voter Registration Day. So we're going to have voter registration tables set up in different places in the area. We have candidate forums coming up in October. There's information about the candidate forums on the table right outside this door here. If you didn't grab that on your way in, you might want to grab that on your way out. The local leagues are also helping the County League of Women Voters collect candidate info for the printed voters guide and for the League's election website, which is www.vote411.org. And it's a great website. It's going to be a real kind of go-to site for candidate information. So the stuff that appears in the printed voters guide is going to be available online, as well as information about your polling place, any referenda on the ballot, a very helpful website. So, and there's information on that, I believe, on the table outside as well. This is just some of what we do. We encourage anyone interested in participating in this, in those activities to contact us. Our email address is also on a paper with membership information outside on that table as well. So basically, there's a ton of info on the table outside the door. Please take a look when the event's over on your way out and grab anything that interests you. Tonight's program is not election related. This is a standalone program, as I said, something we did last year that we hope to continue doing each year. We've got Supervisor Chris Burdick from Bedford, Supervisor Peter Parsons from Lewisboro, and Supervisor Warren Lucas from North Salem. So let's give them a hand. The supervisors are each going to have 10 minutes to bring you up to date on the state of their town. And then we're going to open it up to audience Q&A. And then the supervisors are going to do a quick wrap up when we're done with questions. And then when the event's over, as we're kind of breaking things down and, cleaning up, I'm sure there'll be an opportunity for anyone who wants to speak one-on-one with their supervisor to mingle and do so. So with that, I would like to get things started. We're going to go alphabetically from B, Bedford, and work our way down. And I'd like to turn it over to Supervisor Burdick.
Well, thank you very much. And I first wish to thank the League of Women Voters who so ably present forums of this nature. My 99-year-old mother is a former president of the League of Women Voters in her community, and so always told her three sons of the importance and the benefits of the League. And that's no different here, the community service that they provide. I also want to thank you who have come here tonight to hear from your elected officials. And I also want to acknowledge my colleagues on the town board who are here tonight. Francis Corcoran, David Gabrielson, and in the back, Don Scott. Thank you for coming. We're very fortunate, I feel, in the town of Bedford, that we have a community that's highly engaged, as shown tonight and at so many of the community events, organizations and such throughout the town. And that's really what imbues the town board and what comes out of the town board and how it in turn reflects what the town's priorities are, whether it be budget, whether it be policy. It all comes from the community itself. And we're certainly extremely fortunate, as I mentioned, to have such an involved community. And it directly affects how we go about our business. It affects how we set our budgets, how we set our priorities, how we react to businesses coming in town, how we feel about our facilities and how we should go about tending to them. It all comes from the community. And so that's been the case actually for decades, and I don't think that there's anything that is radically different from that today in terms of that tremendous involvement of the community. I was here on Saturday night at a fundraiser for this library and just saw not only the folks that I've seen here and been in the community for a while, but a lot of young families. And it to me was so encouraging and heartwarming that we saw so many young families that are getting right into the swing of things and getting involved in their communities. We have, as I mentioned, that so much of that gets reflected in how we set our budgets, set our priorities. We have a budget which is within our tax cap and yet is sufficient so it can provide a high level of services to our community. And it reflects, as I say, the priorities of the community. So this existing budget of 2015 does reflect a bit more than we've had in previous years, for example, for such areas as paving, because we recognized, hearing from the community, that so many of our roads got chewed up after one bad winter after another. And so the town board had gone ahead and said, you know, we have to put more into our roads. So starting last year, we increased from approximately $800,000 to $1.1 million how much we were putting into our roads. And well, we should, because we have 97 miles of paved roads. And so we had some catching up to do, and we're doing better on that. And the 2016 budget will also be reflecting that. So 3 budgets actually in a row, starting with 2014, reflected those higher spending levels, again, reflecting priorities of the community. Similarly, I think that the way we went about our capital plan was that we said, you know, what we had in the capital plan from some 10, 12 years ago, where at that time it was a different financial and economic world at that time. There was just a whole lot more of financial capability of a municipality to be able to provide greater facilities. And at the time, the plan that the town board was looking at, the then town board, called for a $10 million police station and was looking for anywhere from a $12 to $14 million highway facility. And, you know, judged from those times, I have to say that the town board was doing a good job because they were looking at what then were the realities. It was looking like population was expanding. It was looking as though our needs of our police department with 45 officers may end up having even more. So at that time it made sense. But we have to adapt to the times. And so the capital plan that we adopted for 2014 to 15 reflected that. And so instead of $12 to $14 million on a facility for our Adams Street Highway garage, instead we're looking at about $2.5 million. And this year, and again with the support of our town board, we're looking at somewhere in the vicinity of $3.5 to $4 million for a police station renovation. And rather than demolishing the existing station, we're going to adapt what is actually a functionally obsolete building at present. But we're not tearing it down. We're working with what we have because that's less expensive. I think we'd all like to have a jacuzzi in the bathroom, but we can't afford it. And so we couldn't afford what was there before. So we're very fortunate that we have that, and that helped in terms of our reaffirmation of the AAA bond rating at the time that we went to the bond markets, and our long bond was about 2.4%, which is extremely low. Fewer than 5% of municipalities enjoy that kind of bond rating. And going forward, we're going to continue with those priorities, where we're going to stay within the tax cap while still providing a high level of services to our community. Also, one thing particularly important to our hamlets of Bedford Hills and Katonah is that very pleased that the Board of Legislators had recently approved our request for a $3.5 million septic system repair and replacement program so that those who are having failures or problems with their septics will have a source of funds. And the way that it will work is very simply that if you have that problem, the Department of Health tells you, I'm talking about Westchester County Department of Health, tells you that you need to get it repaired. You do it in accordance with plans that you file with them and they approve, then you'll be eligible for a 50% reimbursement of that cost. It also would include what's called the enhanced treatment units, so that we're utilizing technology that has been proven in other areas of the country. We're also moving ahead with trying to provide affordable housing. You may have read about the affordable housing project that the Antioch Baptist Church has proposed on Railroad Avenue. The town board is very supportive of that proposal, and we're moving forward with that. And we do feel optimistic that that will come about. So the challenges ahead, people ask me, what are the issues? I don't so much see it as issues as challenges, is that we have a very low tax cap for 2015. It's going to be under 2%. We don't have all of the figures in from the state, but we do intend to stay within the cap. We do instead intend in doing so without cutting services and without layoffs. And we actually believe we can have modest improvement in the level of services, such as what we're doing in the hamlets for hamlet improvements, what we're doing in each of our parks, bit by bit, trying to provide just a little bit more to our residents and businesses. We're in the middle of that budget process, and we certainly encourage all of you to be involved. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Parsons.
Good evening. I echo the thanks of Chris to the League of Women Voters for hosting this, and to each of you who've gone to the trouble to show up this evening. The town board's mission, in my mind, is to make Lewisboro a better place to live. That means working each week to figure out why it will be a better place. That means whether you are raising children in the community, enjoying the empty nester years, or just growing up to become a responsible adult. Children are the heart of a community. Empty nesters are a large source of volunteers for town committees. They tend our preserves. They beautify our roadsides. Without those empty nesters, the town would be a bit of a shadow of itself. And finally, the teenagers and the younger people man our 3 fire departments and the Lewisboro Volunteer Ambulance Corps. The lady who achieved some distinction in the past year, rescuing people from the crash down in Valhalla, going way beyond what was required of any volunteer, was not quite a teenager, but she was darn near it. So how do you build a better community? Let's start with, I guess, almost the primary thing, which is public safety. The police force in Lewisboro had failed to keep up with the times. And we have made during the past few years, we've done a major revamp. We have gone to 4 full-time officers from 1, and we've reduced our reliance on part-timers. And we've been very lucky because we did that just in time to begin to counter a heroin distribution epidemic in northern Westchester. I'm not saying that people in Lewisboro were necessarily using any more than they had, but the means of distribution was certainly Route 35. and several houses in town became drug centers. It was really important that we had strengthened that police department and had an officer who was trained on drug arrests and also drug resuscitation for people who had passed out because of heroin. Finally, we were able to entice the state police into using our old police station, and that has greatly increased the sense of police presence in town. Affordability is another major issue in a town. We need to keep taxes under control, and our tax base is not quite as strong as the people on either side. Basically, Lewisboro's taxes, based on market value of its homes, Lewisboro town taxes, based on market value of the homes, are under half of Bedford's and under half of North Salem's. So we begin with a relatively small pot of 11 million as our annual budget, and we depend heavily on sales and mortgage taxes. As you may know, sales taxes have actually declined this year by about 2% so far, which doesn't make life any easier. We also, in order to make it affordable, have to fend off demands from other levels of government without costing the taxpayer the expense of lawsuits, quite honestly, which could be dramatic. Suddenly we have the state intervening, wanting to create agricultural districts in town. Have I only got 2 minutes left?
Oh, keep going.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
He can have my time.
Now, agricultural districts look fine. Unfortunately, they take away from the tax roll. So every time you have another 25 acres, 40 acres go agricultural district, there goes a bunch of taxes. We've got phosphorus reduction. That doesn't necessarily cost us money, except it reduces our ability to develop dramatically. We have got affordable housing. All of these may be goods in their own right, but they cost the town money. In order to move forward with affordable housing, we've in fact greatly increased the multifamily zone in town so that it now includes, we were at a point where essentially there was no multifamily land which was available for development. We now have quite a lot available for development, and it looks a number of the opportunities we've created are attracting interest. At the moment, we have about 5 different areas where there is an interest. 2 of those, I would say, are at an advanced stage of discussion. The other 3 are way back a bit. Understand, these are not going to be 5 bridal sides. Some of these are 2-family homes, period, and that's it. But only one of them would require a change in zoning in order to go forward. So 4 of these would go forward without the town board having any say whatsoever. The affordability, a couple of other things. That means building our business base. We've passed legislation to allow bed and breakfasts. The Goldens Bridge Shopping Center, there are plans to totally renovate that shopping center and make it way more viable. The area Lower Vista on the Connecticut border is beginning to thrive again. CCA, community choice aggregation, is something that we've got into as a leader, And I believe that will, in the end, result in lower electricity bills for a lot of the people in town. What else is good about Lewisboro? Our recreation. Honor True Park is probably the gem of all playing field complexes in the whole of Westchester. The town park, we put in a composting toilet, which is rather better than the porta-johns, and, well, it is.
You came over and looked at mine.
And we're redoing with the basketball courts. Now, both of those are being done with funds which are reserved for Park and Rec. In the preserves, Leon Levy has been transformed into a magnificent destination in Lewisboro. Old Field has been tended and is now doing what it's supposed to do. There are wonderful trails at Onatru. We are doing something at the town park, and I anticipate huge strides being taken in Brownell with this year. You all know that the library, well, you may not know, but the library has been totally renovated, and the roads in town, we began a year earlier than you, Chris, to realize that they needed some radical work, and we've got 130, we have lobbied fairly intensely to get 138 paved last year, and 123 will be paved in the spring of next year. That is big for our town because we really depend on those state roads. All in all, we're trying to build a better Lewisboro. And it isn't always easy, and sometimes people disagree with us, but I think these are significant steps forward. Thank you. You can't say I haven't got timing.
I get 45 seconds.
Those are now mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parsons. Go ahead, Supervisor Lucas.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for doing this, and also for everybody for coming tonight. It's very nice of you to do that. Last year I did a PowerPoint, and I saw Chris go through his pages, and I said, well, that was much more professional. I'm going to do that because I ad-libbed. This year I have the pages, and Chris ad-libbed, so. But I want to thank everybody for coming this evening. My name's Warren Lucas. My family's been in North Salem actually since 1760, so for me it's home. I've been on the town board since 1989, and I've been supervisor since 2009. North Salem, it's 24 square miles, the same size as Manhattan. We have a slightly smaller population, about 5,200. Turns out it's about the same size as Pound Ridge. It has 2 unincorporated villages on the western side of I-684, Purdy's and Croton Falls. And people who live in North Salem come there for the rural character of the town, the horse farms that crisscross, the beautiful open vistas, recreational activities around Peach Lake. 2 weeks ago, the town hosted the American Gold Cup for horse jumping at Old Salem Farm. In another week, whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, everybody from New York City will be up there at Harvest Moon Farm and Outhouse Orchards with the apple picking and stuff. And we will end up with thousands of people all backed out onto I-684 to pick apples and spend a day in the country. North Salem is in very good shape. I'd say excellent shape, but there's always things that you'd like to accomplish and work on. We stayed under the tax cap for the last, well, ever since it was put in, and we finished some of the major milestones that we set for ourselves since I started this job in 2009. The Peach Lake Sewer District, we worked, finalized the funding, got the work done, and the system is online 2 years ago. The Croton Falls Water District was completely overhauled. We had some very serious problems there. The town master plan and the rec plan were approved, and zoning changes were made for certain areas in town, and several of the town buildings have been built and repurposed. We now have a new highway garage. The old highway garage, I think Lisa went by it the other day because I said we can have our meeting in there for something that's coming up in North Salem. I think she wanted to just check it out to see what it looked like. 18 months ago, the fire department bought the Verizon building. They've rehabbed it, and they're moving the Croton Falls Fire Department into that. It's right off of Exit 8, and that's going to serve the community for years to come. North Salem has a variety of housing stock, both expensive and inexpensive. When you really look at it, I don't think a lot of people appreciate that. But you can buy a house in North Salem at a very inexpensive price. If you want to spend $20 million, we have those also. Unfortunately for the mortgage tax, they always pay cash on the very expensive ones. But many people don't realize 19% of the homes in North Salem are around Peach Lake. And so that's become a very critical thing as people now go year-round in that area, what used to be summer communities. With the Peach Lake Sewer District, we're seeing a lot of improvements in the water quality of the lake, quite frankly. I got calls all summer, the water's much clearer, they can see down to the bottom, at 8-10 feet, which is exciting for some of them. And we're getting a lot of permits for a number of home improvements. We actually have tear downs. People are coming in and rebuilding homes, so it's kind of nice. When you don't need the Board of Health approval because of the sewer and the water systems, it makes it very easy. With the help of Assemblyman Dave Buchwald and Senator Terrence Murphy, we just got New York State added to the prestigious list of New York State inland waterways. I think the Great Lakes are there, the Sagamihara Reservoir, some of the Finger Lakes, and of course now Peach Lake is on the list. And why is that important? Because I can now apply for lake management grants and specialized CFA grants that you couldn't if you're not on the list. That's the first thing in the grant program, is it on the list. So we've done a lot of that type of stuff, and I think Peach Lake is an area that's going to be up and coming. It's just a great recreation area, and the homes are fairly inexpensive, even on water on the lake. We also have completed negotiations and plans for NYSEG to put natural gas into that area of town starting this fall and over the next several years. Due to problems during Lee, Sandy, and Irene, we also have been working with NYSEG over the last few years, and they've actually just finished hooking up multiple of their transmission lines so they can actually flip-flop back and forth on the entire southern area of the town. If the Chapel line from Lewisboro goes down, we switch over to the other one. And so hopefully we'll be able to stay up when other people are down, which is obviously important for us. We have 2 MTA train stations in town. I think everybody knows that, Purdy and Croton Falls. And we have a very small but vibrant general business district in our Croton Falls hamlet. We've worked with Lakeland Lumber, who's one of the businesses there. They had some stuff that they were thinking about doing. The zoning wasn't quite right, but we've worked with the owner, and we have some interesting businesses coming in there that'll invigorate the ham a little bit. Throughout North Salem, we have a number of well-known restaurants. I don't know why we have so many, but 121, Farm and Fish, Croton Creek, Primavera, Vox. I'm sure some of you folks have been at some of those. Farm and the Fish, it's insane. You can't. In fact, my deputy supervisor bartends Saturday if you want to go in and see him. And we also have a number of delis and other things in town, the Blazer, Swan, Kingsley's, Hayfields, Gordon's. We have 2 large nursing homes. We have the Westchester Exceptional Children's School, and we have a number of businesses on Fields Lane off of Exit 8. In some of the zoning changes that we just did, we made it easier for those businesses to actually, different types, different styles, multiple businesses per building, make it easier on some of the owners over there to get to generate more tax money for the town. Also, the area in Brewster Ice Arena, people say, well, that's in Brewster, it's in the town of Southeast. Well, it happens to be in our school district, so that whole area of Fields Lane is still important to us from a tax point of view. North Salem has a very large amount of agriculture. I said people come there for rural character and open land, including the 1,000-acre Mountain Lakes Park. North Salem Open Land Foundation is a big organization in town. They have 1,217 acres. When I looked at their website today of land that's open and available to walk on. We have the Bedford Audubon. Their largest of 4 parcels is in North Salem. I think it's about 320 acres. And not to mention over 1,000 acres of DEP property that obviously people use for fishing and such. There's also a lot of other farms in town. I know there was a comment, we can talk about it later, about ag. It costs us 4%. And you can go back both ways on both sides of the discussion, but right now it's 4% of the taxes. My tax bill would go up about 4%. The other side of that is what would the school tax go up if all that acreage had kids on it. So it cuts both ways, and I'm not quite sure exactly where we come down on it, but I think people love the rural character of the town. I did want to talk a little bit about finances because, when we get, I have 2 minutes left, so I'm going to go fast. Huh? Well, every time you go like this and lean back, you're sharing the hell out of us.
2 minutes,
So let me talk about finances just a little bit. North Salem's general and highway budget is $7.9 million. Taxes are $5.8 million, a little less. 20% of the town budget is not from real estate taxes. It's from things like mortgage tax, sales tax, building fees, court fees, those types of things. The average tax bill in North Salem, the town tax bill, is $2,800. Mortgage tax and sale tax have not returned to where they were years ago. It used to be huge. I used to have another $1 million to play with. And when you lose that, in 3 areas. Mortgage tax, sales tax, and pension used to be 0. For me, last year, that 0 for me went to $462,000, which is a big nut when it used to be nothing. When it was probably about 6-7% of my budget. So what makes each town unique are the many different things that we put in, because there's stuff we have to do, and then there's a bunch of other things that, for some reason over the years we've decided to do. North Salem's largest single budget item is refuse pickup, and I don't think Lewisboro or Bedford have that, but that's actually paid through the taxes. And 2 years ago, it was 15% of the budget. Now I have 2 minutes. Over a year ago, we started single stream, and it's been a big success. It's doubled our recycling. It's dropped our budget, the money we have to pay, by about 25%. It's been pretty good. We're also very much invested in Sustainable Westchester, which is really out of the Bedford 2020 programs and their community choice aggregation and all those wonderful things in the environmental area. North Salem, we also fund our library, $327,000. We provide our ambulance corps with $150,000. You go from town to town, and some towns give them more, some towns give them nothing, and it's kind of interesting. We have a part-time police force. We fund about $500,000 a year. So does Somers. Different towns do things differently. The tax cap this year is 0.75%, and there's reasons why it's good and why it's not. The obvious reasons it makes us scrutinize the budget. The reason it's bad is because it's artificial. Right? If you tell somebody, you go out and have a good time, but don't spend any more than this, well, they figure it out, but there are things that they either should be doing, or like roads and drainage, that they don't do, or they push off into other things. They borrow money to do those things. And those are the types of things that really need to get addressed at the state level. I'm sure you're aware, but there's 2 sides of every budget. We have an operating budget and a capital budget. There's been a lot of discussion about capital budgets. We have meetings all the time, and you probably are aware, well, you may not be aware, but we probably see each other about, twice a week on average? We have another meeting this week. We had one today. We love each other. That's why we get along so well together here. But the capital is the biggest problem. It's how do you fund these types of things? You can't necessarily take something that has a lifespan of 15, 20 years and invest out of your operating budget. I mean, you can do that, but you run out of money real fast. And so a lot of those issues are the issues that really drive the discussions that we have. The laws out of Albany, prevailing supplemental wage law, those types of things destroy our ability to do the job correctly. And we need people involved who want to talk to Albany, that understand them and go up to Albany and say, hey, guys, you need to do these types of things. So
You've got 45 seconds.
I have yours? Okay. I'm gonna stretch it. So things like health insurance, pension, unemployment insurance, MTA platform tax, they all affect the operating budget. Things like the cost of labor affected by the prevailing and supplemental wage law in 2007, and the cost of materials drive paving up 40%, and they don't get that up in Albany. And those are the types of things that we deal with, and hopefully we'll have some discussions about things of that nature. Let me just, one other quick thing, because I know it'll be a part of maybe a discussion. We voted in a townwide reval a year or so ago. It'll be done probably in the spring, and it'll affect our 2018 tax rolls. So far, it's going fairly smoothly, and I'll tell you that the vote on the town board was 5-0 when we actually passed it and agreed to do it. So most people focus on that and say the tax, you just want to get more taxes. I'm focused on the county tax and the school tax and trying to figure out how to get my total assessed valuation down, because the equalization rates are, the way they produce them are a bit insane.
I want you to pay more and me to pay less.
Well, hopefully it'll work out that way for you, but I'm hoping it's just the opposite. So anyway, that's kind of North Salem in a nutshell, and I want to thank again everybody for coming this evening, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
The comedy stylings of our supervisors, who knew? So what we're going to do is open it up to audience questions. You can raise your hand, I'll call on you, and I'm going to repeat the question for the purposes of television so it can be heard by people when they watch this at home. A reminder that questions need to end in a question mark, so not statements, questions. And this is a very informal event. We don't want to get into anything nasty. Let's not have anything be personal in nature. No personal attacks. Valid questions with question marks at the end is all we ask. I want to start with the lead question just to start things off, get the ball rolling, and then raise your hand and I'll call on you. And you alluded to this, Mr. Lucas, toward the end of your talk. We, league members, were, I think, surprised and impressed last year at this event about how closely you all work together. So understanding that each town has, things that are going to be specific concerns and issues for your own town, but also how you have issues that you share. So if one or two or all of you could kind of elaborate on the way that you work together, that would be great. Because I don't know if people realize
Sure.
that.
You know,
Go ahead.
I'll
You
take
have
30
a bunch of
seconds
type A
and then we'll,
personalities here, so there's going to be a problem.
no, I think we all can speak to this. I'll speak to, we have, Peter had referred to, in his statement, to phosphorus reduction requirements that we have. And that's all passed to us through the state and again, laudable objectives. It's to protect New York City drinking water, and Consolidated Water District uses that, as does 85% of the population of Westchester County. So certainly laudable goals. Part of the way of protecting that is to reduce the phosphorus content that ends up in our watershed. Very costly proposition. There's an entity called the East of Hudson Watershed Corporation, and the three of us are on the executive committee of that. And our job is to try to figure out how to use dollars very wisely, very carefully, stretch the dollars so that we can develop what they call practices, which are projects to try to reduce the amount of phosphorus going into the watershed. I think actually maybe you each could speak to that, but there's also the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee. There's also the organization which Warren chairs, which is the Westchester Putnam Association of Town Supervisors, and each of these entities give us all an opportunity to work with one another.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
No, you go ahead. We'll go in alphabetical order.
I was ditto on all of the phosphorus stuff. But there is also, which I am, incidentally, to give you an idea of scale, that takes, I would say, at least a day every month of each of our time. Now, that may not sound very much, but
It's more than that.
it could well be more than that, because it's pretty intense when you work on it. So that I get up early in the morning, I go to a restaurant, I sit down for a long breakfast reading everything, so that when I actually get into the meeting, I know something about what I'm doing. But also there is a totally other area called sustainability, which is a major force in the county. I referred to the community, what's it?
Community
Choice aggregation plan. That was developed by the sustainability people. I sit on the board of Energize, which is another a pretty intensive job. They really want you to read stuff and approve it. And, well, what?
That's what happens on board, you have to read stuff.
Yes, but this is almost like sitting on a private board, quite honestly, with the amount of financial data you have to get through in order to approve things. It's a small board. It is not a big board. It does not include everybody in Westchester by any means. It includes this gentleman and myself and some others. There is a huge amount of collaboration between us. I've left Westchester to you, the Westchester Municipal Officials Association, because you're an officer of that.
I am. Probably about half, would you say half our time, or at least a third of our time is spent outside of town?
Yeah.
Probably that much.
At
And
least.
but I think the thing about it is that I have to tell you, I learn from these guys all the time. I've only been in the job of supervisor since January of last year. I didn't know what East of Hudson Watershed Corporation was all about until I joined, and these folks showed me the ropes. And I can't tell you how collaboratively we work to try to
There
make
is-
that as
yeah.
good an organization
I
as we
think one of
can.
the interesting things, and today we had the Westchester Putnam Association Westchester Putnam Association of Town Supervisor meeting. It ends up just being a Westchester meeting because it has been for many years, but we haven't changed the name because our checks still have the other name on it. We have no idea whether you're Republican or Democrat when you get there. We all have the same issues. We all have varying sizes of the same issues. Somebody may have a bigger garbage problem than I do. Somebody has a bigger water problem than Chris. Somebody has a bigger recreation problem than, and you sit through those meetings, and that's where we really learn a lot. Today, the meeting went for 2.5 hours, and we just talked amongst ourselves to try and deal with a lot of the issues. They mentioned East Hudson Watershed Corp. That was just something, we ended up creating it. There's 19 municipalities. It was Northern Westchester Watershed Committee, NWWC. I was vice chair last year. I think you're vice chair this year. Rick Marcy Summers is chairman. There's 46 million there right now, 3.5 million. Chris asked for that for Bedford. I'm going to be asking for some money tomorrow. Thank you very much. East Hudson Watershed Corp. Why phosphorus? That's what causes algae and seaweed, and when you get that, things eutrophy, the reservoirs and stuff. And New York City wanted us to basically take that out of the taxes, your real estate taxes, and pay for this stuff. Turns out the plan that they had us working on was about an $85 to $100 million plan for the 19 municipalities. They ended up going from a 10-year to a 5-year scope because we were in the middle of this thing involved, and they ended up giving us $38.2 million. We calculated out it was going to be about $38 million, and they came up with that, handed that to us, and that's what we've been using over the past 5 years to mitigate a lot of these problems around. Some of them are in North Salem, some of them are in Bedford. They're all over different communities. And so we deal with each other across a variety of things. I'm chairman of the legislative committee. I had the enjoyable part to go up to Albany as part of WMOA, Westchester Municipal Officials Association. This year I'm the second vice president. Last year I was treasurer. I'm treasurer of the East Hudson Corp. You look at different people and everybody's something in a different organization. The amount of time we spend together, we get along great, which is one of the most fun parts of the job. I know we love doing things inside the town, but one of the neatest things is to go out and sit down and talk to somebody. I had a problem where I had, my bookkeeper actually had some detached retinas, and I sent a note around, and Chris said, well, I may have somebody here that can help you out. Luckily, we didn't need him, but those are the types of things I know Peter needs some help on something now, too, with this planning department, so.
Yeah, I don't have one.
Yeah. Somebody quit on him. Not because of him, but so we get along great. We work together all the time with intermunicipal agreements between towns, and so it's been a great experience. It's very enjoyable.
All right, great. Okay, so audience questions? Sir, if you could state your name, the town in which you reside, and say your question, then I'll repeat it for TV.
Okay. Good evening, thank you. This is really informative, and that's a dynamic that I'd love to see in some other governmental areas. My name's Joseph Leon, I live in Bedford Village. I learned a few things serving on the school board, I'm a former division controller, CPA, all of that. You can read my book next month, I'm not going to go into that. On the school board, it used to amuse people when we claimed that we can only control 19% of the budget because the rest of it was contracts. And of course, my statement was, did we sign those contracts? Did we quantify the economic impact at the time of the contract? So what I'm asking is if anybody is doing this, because it's pretty exasperating to have a 2% problem when you signed a contract 3 years ago and you didn't quantify the dollar impact projected all the way out with anything accompanying, like benefits. But do you do that? Do you think it's a best practice? Will you do it? I'd just love to know because it'll save your anxiety, among other things.
Thank you. The question was the impact of contracts on budgets?
Just to make a couple of quick points, and then a lot of what we end up with is because of legislation from Albany. We don't like the legislation they give us. When you go up there and say, would you please change this? The answer is typically no. And I'm going to let everybody know what the problem is with New York State. And we've had discussions years ago. They sued Albany.
Is there a 1 hour limit on
Yes.
this?
They sued the Senate. The representation was, I think, 2 senators per county. No, they wanted by population. New York and Buffalo now control 54% of the Senate, 54% of the Assembly. New York has no residential real estate tax problem. My son-in-law has a house there, $3,000 in taxes. He has a nice lawn in Queens and stuff. They get whatever they want. They pass whatever law they want. And you sit there and you say, we don't like this. This just increased the cost of paving by 40%. They don't care. In fact, what they told me verbally is you don't have a constituency. The unions do. They will vote the way, right? You don't have a constituency. And that's why evenings like this are important. Because there are things like MTA platform tax. My town pays $243,000 this year. I don't know what Bedford pays. The state decided that everybody's going to pay the MTA platform tax. And so a lot of the money that goes out the door is completely out of our control. They came down to North Salem, looked at the work I had and said, you have to get a second building inspector. Otherwise, you're going to get fined. Why? Because they gave MS4 stormwater regulations, they gave us fire code, they gave us quote for it, they gave us zone. They said, you can't do it when you have to hire a second one. And here's the fine if you don't. Okay. I mean, the guy was doing the job, but they came down and decided. So a lot of the stuff is completely out of our control, and that's what's very, very frustrating. That's the most frustrating part of the job, in my opinion.
You know, let me address what, specifically you were asking about. I've been through 2 negotiation not sessions, but with 2 different bargaining units. And we're towards the end on one of those. And in each case, I can't see how anyone can make an informed decision without knowing the financial impact. So every time, and for those who've been through negotiation, there's an offer, counter-offer, counter-offer, et cetera, et cetera. And every step of the process, I had our controller cost it out. You sit down with the department heads whose budgets are affected and say, okay, I need you to identify everything in your budget that this affects so that our controller knows how to properly capture that in costing it out so that you end up with accurate numbers, so that you know what it's going to cost. Because obviously the other side is going to come up with facts that may be a little selective and may, look, for example, say they're comparing with other communities and say, well, you really ought to be giving us X because these 7 communities, are doing such and such. And we'll say, well, you kind of left out a couple communities there. And so you have to cost it out. You have to know that you're comparing apples with apples. And you've got to do that throughout the process. And our board does that as a group. So that we're sitting down as a group and saying, okay, what do we feel is reasonable? What do we feel is responsible? What do we feel is something that our residents can afford? Can we do this and stay within the property tax cap? Those are the questions that we absolutely have to ask. I do have to say that our board, each step of the way, we want to have a decent working relationship with our bargaining units. These are the folks who, there are police that patrol our streets and make our communities safe. They're the folks who plow our roads in the winter. We want to have a good relationship. But we also want to make sure that it's fair and that it doesn't create an overburden to our residents. And I know, talking to these gentlemen, that they go through the same analysis.
Sometimes it's particularly tough. We had a situation where a particular group in town had been 6 years without any contract. They were a vital group to the town, and the whole area was dissolving into chaos because if you don't give anybody in a department an increase in 6 years, things begin to get a little bit testy, and that's about the mildest way I can think of putting it. So yes, but one of the things I would stress is the importance of trying to settle contracts relatively quickly, because having to having struggled through a 6-year gap, the contract was finally signed. It's for 11 years. That is huge, but it also affects every other contract you negotiate after that, is to some extent a reflection of what you had to give away to settle the first one. It's not good, but in the end, we need what we've got. He's better off. He doesn't have any unions, so he negotiates them. Actually, Warren, to be fair, without unions, pays very well indeed and treats his employees excellently.
We all go around to all the towns and say, what do you pay for this, what do you pay for this? I go into Putnam a little bit because I'm a little further north, and you try to pay something that's reasonable. If you pay something that's, a little too high, it comes back to bite you in the long run, so.
Thank you. More questions? Yes?
Yeah, my name's Julie Stern, I'm from Bedford. I have a question about one of the governor's initiatives called the Government Efficiency Plans. If you guys can address what you've been able to accomplish with each of the towns?
Okay, the question was about the governor's efficiency plans?
Government efficiency plans.
Government efficiency plans.
This is another area in which we all worked collaboratively, because we made reference to the East Hudson Watershed Corporation, and that is just one of the prime examples of an intermunicipal agreement in which working together, it reduces the cost of getting the job done. And thanks to Warren, who did a lot of the number cracking on that as treasurer of East Hudson, and was able to show the substantial savings that every one of our communities was able to achieve. And each of us, for our respective communities, was able to go through with flying colors in terms of being able to exceed by quite a bit the 1% reduction that was required under the Government Efficiency Plan. And just for those who may not be familiar with it, the Government Efficiency Plan is part of a two-prong requirement in order for a community to be tax cap compliant. And for your residents to be eligible for the refund on property taxes that come from the state. And that is, you got to be under the tax cap, and you have to file a government efficiency plan. And each of us had done that. Another area that worked extremely well, and I have to thank the Katonah Fire District and Hank Bergson, who had made this not only something available for all of the fire districts in Bedford, but throughout Westchester County, is that through collaborative efforts that the fire districts had, they were able to save substantially for their own district. And what we did here in Bedford is we had the fire districts join with us to combine our government efficiency plan, because they don't have, controllers. They don't have people to put this all together. So it was an excellent cooperative effort. So I know that talking to Peter and to Warren, they each had no problem meeting the government efficiency plan.
In fact, I would add to that the government efficiency plan, when it came to shared services, was a magnificent example of how out of touch Albany was, because the savings that we could have come up with was so much more than the 1% that it's absurd.
I think we had 7%.
I mean,
Yeah.
they act as if towns don't collaborate. They do. Anybody here has been seriously ill, there's a thing called a fly car, which comes to pick you off the street.
Advanced life support.
Sorry, advanced life support. That is a collaborative effort. It just goes on and on and on.
One of the things that upset me a little bit, which is kind of on the side of this thing, was when the governor came down and said there are 400 taxing entities in Westchester County. Well, by state law, you have to have that many. I have 3 water districts. One has 54 people in it, one has 75 people in it, one has 95 people in it. They're taxing districts. Everybody in town doesn't pay for the water. I have 2 lighting districts because people wanted some street lights. I have 10 taxing districts in Little North Salem. I have a fire department, I have a sewer district, I have those types of things. I don't know how else you would do it unless you just want it to be in the general budget and everybody pays for things they don't use. So it was a little disingenuous, I think, for the governor to come down and make those statements, quite frankly. And the comment with what we had to show as the savings, it was such a small number on things that we always normally do. I was kind of surprised. So.
Any other questions? Yes?
My name is Patsy Morton from Bedford. I would like to know if each of the panelists could talk about any efforts or initiatives in the area of solar power or alternate sources of energy, or your town bill, and within the communities as far as residents using those sources.
Okay, the
Well, you
question.
better go now because of Bedford 2020.
Just to repeat, the question was about initiatives, solar power, and alternative energy.
Well, Peter is absolutely right. Bedford 2020 is just, a shining example of how the community has been able to initiate changes in the way we go about things, whether it be the creation, really indirectly, of Energy Improvement Corporation, now called Energize, that Peter had referenced. Also, what now is Sustainable Westchester, Inc., started with Northern Westchester Energy Improvement Consortium. And so it grew from that. And right now, there are a couple of initiatives. One we recently had earlier this year, and that was a grant that we got from NYSERDA, Bedford, partnering with Mount Kisco to encourage residents and businesses to go solar and to at least investigate whether or not it's something that works for them. And we did get a number of sign-ups. We wish it were more, but at least it's going in the right direction. One of the things that we are going to be doing in the renovation of the police station is we're going to put solar panels on the roof, because we have to have a new roof anyway. That's the time to do it. And, we hope that that's something that in turn will encourage individuals and businesses to do likewise. Sustainable Westchester has a program which is called Municipal Solar Buyers Group, and what that is to try to identify opportunities primarily in businesses, but also with municipalities, in which third-party money would come in and would finance the facility and do a long-term lease. And what it'd be paid back with is the dollars in the energy bills. But those energy bills, if it's going to work, are going to be lower than what they're presently paying. Community choice aggregation is another example of that. We don't go forward with it unless there's going to be a savings to the consumer. And ultimately what we're looking for an increase in the amount of renewable energy. And so that too is another initiative of Sustainable Westchester. And again, we're going to be working with Bedford 2020 and other community groups to help market this to the community once it's in place.
I suspect Lewisboro, or I'm investigating a fairly major municipal project in Lewisboro. And I quite honestly don't see any reason why it shouldn't go forward unless I get a massive outburst of "that is ugly." But it would make superb economic sense. We've got two businesses, well, one charity and one business, that are exploring it heavily. And we've got a certain number of homes, I don't know how many, that are exploring it or have done it. So I think there's a role. I think that you will find a greater and greater role for solar in the future.
Chris and Bedford really, all the other communities have to take their hat off to Bedford for the work that they did with Bedford 2020. I think most of you probably know that. There's a lot of people from Bedford here, obviously, who are in Bedford. That really is what ended up morphing into the different organizations that you heard about, including Sustainable Westchester, which is, how many municipalities? 35?
I think we had 38
I
municipalities
think it's
in
almost
Westchester
everybody
County.
at this point is part of that. We've got money and grants. The organization is held up as a model by the state. And that's really the thing that's helping us move a lot of this stuff forward. That municipal solar buyers group that was mentioned, I've given them locations in town where I have good roofs. The Peach Lake Sewer District, I have a nice metal roof. I said, look at that, give me the price back. They will put the panels in, and I just have to commit to paying the kilowatt hour charge. I have another roof salt shed and my new highway garage. My new highway garage is a metal roof. The salt shed, which is perfectly facing the right direction, I have to put a new roof on that first. They're not going to put it up and take it off in 5 years when a new roof goes in. So those types of things are really back to Bedford. I got to give them just a huge amount of credit because the amount of work that went into putting that, and a lot of it was volunteers from your town that I saw that put all this stuff together. We keep on mentioning Community Choice Aggregation, CCA. And very simply what that is, if you're out there with NYSEG, and or even Con Ed, you have the plan, you just say, yeah, I want electricity. You don't go out and look for it. You end up with a base NYSEG plan or a Con Ed plan. What Community Choice Aggregation allows us to do is to pool the community, get all of their usage, go out to a third party and say, we want electric price for these many gigawatts or megawatts, whatever it ends up being. We're going to have an option for electricity, and it's going to be better than the NYSEG one, so anybody who's in the default plan automatically goes into that. There's also going to be an option for solar and wind power there. It's going to probably cost more. I would think it's definitely going to cost more than the base power, but everybody will have an option of moving to that. When this thing was up in Albany, to tell you the power that some of this stuff has that from Westchester, they were so interested in moving this forward, and the governor was so interested in moving it forward. It got to the Public Service Commission, and the biggest problem was we can't just do this for Westchester, we need to do it for the whole state. And Mark Tealking, some of you may know Mark, but I was talking to him about it, and Mike Gordon also from your town. And the PSC actually said, look, give us a month, we'll get the thing through, and we're going to rewrite it so it's good for anybody in the state of New York if they want to put this type of program together. And of course, they never do anything in a month or two. And that was the end of December, and by, I think, the middle of February, it was all done, and the legislation was out, and they were kind of blown away. And that's because of the power of some of this stuff and the people that were involved in making it work. So the biggest problem, to be very frank, with solar, if you're in NYSEG, is NYSEG electrical prices are actually fairly inexpensive. I mean, the delivery charge is around 3.9 cents. If you're in Con Ed, it's 7.6 cents. It makes a big difference when you're trying to sell solar power and you have to have somebody commit and sign up for a 9.2 cent kilowatt hour charge, whatever it might be. But it'll slowly come up here. The units are getting more efficient and stuff, and I think we'll see a lot more of it up in northern Westchester soon.
Thank you. I saw a hand over here, yes.
My name's Catherine Gasbridge. I'm from Katonah, and I just want to apologize. Don't want to end on a dark note, but this is really directed towards you, Peter. I don't know your last name. I'm sorry.
Parsons.
You had brought up the concern of heroin, and you increased the police force. So I guess I have three questions. One, do you all work together addressing drug issues? Two, do you have a plan in place to continue to keep it as far away as we can possibly get it from here? Not let it increase.
You mean
And do you
put
communicate-
centers for heroin distribution elsewhere?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Do you have a plan where you communicate all of this with the community? Because this is the first time I heard about it. And obviously I read about the epidemic, so I am concerned.
Yeah,
Let me just quickly repeat the question for TV. I'm sorry. It was about the heroin epidemic, the supervisors working together. Are there plans in place? And what's the communication going to be on those plans, if any?
Well, I have a Narcan kit out in my bag out in the car. And I actually got out to most of the people in the town. I have a Facebook page, North Salem NY Info, telling them anytime something comes up, I let them know what's going on. And I actually got a couple of people call me up and said, you shouldn't be telling them people died. You shouldn't be telling them that there were robberies in town. You shouldn't be telling them that this person who was robbing was taking 20 hits of heroin a day. This stuff is in our communities. It's an absolutely devastating problem. It costs $8 or so to get a hit of heroin. And anybody who was out at, the kids, they're popping pills and stuff, Oxycontin. Oxycontin's very expensive. Heroin costs nothing. And they're mixing with other drugs. It's causing some severe problems because the potency's all over the place. We had 3 people in a 3-day period in North Salem that were OD'd over this year so far, not in North Salem, but 3 people from North Salem. One 37-year-old, the other in their 20s died of heroin overdoses. It's to say it's not here or it's not critical is you're putting your head in the sand. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's doing it. It doesn't mean that all the kids are doing it. But you don't need too many people in a town. If I have 5 people in the town that are either selling or trying to find money to buy heroin, that's really the problem. The town's a mess. I got people walk there because they don't care. They're going in and robbing, and they almost don't care if they get caught. They need the fix. So we're working very closely with the county. My cops are working very closely with the county. I don't know as we work together. I know, I don't, not to pick on, he mentioned that we had a place in Lewisboro, but I mean, I had people, the guy in Lewisboro was selling the stuff to people in North Salem. Turns out that.
He was also selling it with the people in Greenwich.
Yeah.
He was selling it throughout the area.
And he had really good stuff, and people died in North Salem because of it. And it's a real serious problem. So working very closely with the county, and Peter can tell you what they're doing.
We are working, this is not so much, I mean, there is some, and I'm not saying there is no intermunicipal cooperation, but the main source of cooperation on this is the county. We lend a cop to the county to work with the county on this. In return, we get a lot of cooperation from other people who are also working with the county and know what they're doing. We've cleaned up at least 2 major distribution hubs in Lewisboro over the last 18 months. We have made numerous arrests on Route 35, which are not necessarily anything to do with our locality. These may be going up to Maine or Boston, do you know that? But 35 has become something of a distribution route, and I wouldn't advise you to have overly tinted windows when you go through 35, otherwise you may be pulled over, because I gather that dealers tend to like cars with overly tinted windows, which are illegal. The second half of this problem, though, is not just distribution, which is we're working very hard on. It is also the effect on individuals in the town who are users. Now, certainly, all our cops have got the life-saving Narcan and know how to use it. I'm one behind Warren, I don't carry it, but all the cops do. The area where I would encourage people to put pressure more than anywhere else is on the schools in this one. The schools, I'm probably going to get into trouble for this, but I believe the schools tend to wish it away, to turn a bit of a blind eye, or not a blind eye, but they don't want to cause trouble for themselves by pushing this issue as hard as they should be at the moment.
We're working closely with our school. I don't want to have to.
All right.
I think that, well, first I should mention that a couple of weeks ago, you may have read that our police department was instrumental in a major breakup and busting of a drug ring. And that would not have occurred without interagency cooperation. Warren and Peter are correct that most of it is not between our towns, but with other safety and law enforcement agencies. And it was extremely effective. It was done over the period of months of covert operations to identify the individuals that were involved in it. But there's just no question that it's a very alarming and scary problem. We work closely with both the Bedford Central School District as well as Katonah Library in sharing information and identifying problems. We have a resource officer that's embedded at Fox Lane High School, and that certainly is something that's extremely helpful to us. They're more in trying to identify those who are the users and the possible future fatalities. And so, enormously important. I think that our police department has been doing a superb job in dealing with it and in working with other law enforcement agencies to be able to grapple with it and have some results. It's not going to go away. It would be foolish to think that it's going to go away. The best thing that we can do is to try to identify it and crack down on it and get as many arrests as we can.
I must admit, I'm a bit down on this subject at the moment because of a long presentation I went through last week, I think, at Northern Westchester Hospital, which kind of scared me a lot, that however much we're doing, we're probably not doing enough.
It's kind of like invasive weeds. You know, it's very hard to get rid of the invasive weeds.
What about treatment? I mean,
You know, we have people in town, and I know some of the kids are wonderful kids.
Yeah.
They happen to, you know, take Oxycontin, they happen to snort some heroin because you don't have to inject it. And it takes one time, and you got a serious problem. And I know, as I said, I know some of the kids personally. They've been off it for 6 months, and it takes about a half a second for somebody to offer them something or stick it right in their face, and they have a very hard decision to make. And we're going to say,
Well, what's going on to help these kids recognize what's going on? I mean,
well, it really starts, you know, when you're 37 and you have a fatal overdose. At that point, it's almost too late. You need to educate them in the school. And I know North Salem has a special program. My OEM coordinator works with them. He's on their committee. And we're trying to do whatever we can do with them to help and support it. But it really turns, it ends up being with the kids. What's interesting is most of the problems are with kids in their 20s, mid-20s. And I don't know why, but I don't have a lot of problems. I have marijuana problems with kids younger, but the heroin, for whatever reason, seems to be in the mid-20s. That's where people are having problems. And, you know, you do have kids, unfortunately, they go off this stuff for a couple of months because they're trying like crazy, and they take a hit, and they're not used to taking the same hit that they took before, and they're dead.
Both
So,
Bedford
it's a
and
problem.
ourselves have jointly fund a major program in the schools, if that's what we're to work on this particular issue.
You know, and I have to tell you that it personally comes home. My son was pallbearer at a funeral 3 or 4 years ago to a close friend of his who died with an overdose. And that's when you know that it's, you know, it's not something that's anonymous. It's right around the corner, and it's the family next door.
Any more questions?
I have one question, Catherine Deering from Bedford. Unfortunately, I lost a nephew to a heroin overdose 18 months ago,
I'm terribly sorry.
19 years old. They live up in Hyde Park.
You know, just let me stop for a second.
It's everywhere.
Westchester County gives the Narcan classes for free. Naloxone is the name of the generic name. They give you the prescription for free. I went down to the class an hour. If you know of anybody that has a problem, if the kid has a problem, it's as simple as when they're out and they're OD'd and they're this close to dying, you squirt them in the nose and you got to get out of the way because in 2 minutes they're up and going. I would urge everybody, and I've told people in town this, if you know of anybody who has a problem, get the kit. Yeah, it costs you nothing, and you know, our cops saved a couple of lives already this year with the kit. So,
But
I'm sorry.
I've kind of another downer question, sorry, you're at the end of the topic. I also, there's mental illness is a concern of mine.
Oh, I thought you meant
Yeah,
us.
mental illness. No.
Us?
I'm talking about serious mental illness. I had a brother with schizophrenia, and in this country, there's some alarming statistics that every day, some person with something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder is shot by a policeman because they don't take their medication, and we've closed all the mental hospitals, so they're all out there, and there are a lot of training programs that have been put in place to train police forces to deal with these people and get them to the hospital rather than to a jail. And I was wondering if you could comment on anything like that.
You know, let me just make one quick comment. I told you I have a part-time police force. They're all New York City cops, more than half of them are. I had the head of the New York City bomb squad. He was my lieutenant. I had the guys on the narco. We had 3 guns pulled on our cops last year in town. And they're all fine. All the folks that pulled the guns are fine because they knew how to react. They didn't shoot them. You know, they dealt with the problems and stuff. It takes a lot of training. It takes a lot of cool. I mean, they all obviously wear their bulletproof vests, but it doesn't stop a rifle, which was pointed at one of them and stuff. So, I mean, two of the folks wanted the cops to kill them, I'm sure. And the other person, there were a lot of domestic types of things. So I don't know if we've had anybody that's had that problem, but our cops, they go through education all the time, but it comes down to just a lot of personal skill and experience, I think.
All of our cops, I think you will find, go through a lot of education in this. And, you know, in the end, you've just got to pray that the education and the situation which they confront fit. Is it perfect? No. But we try.
Well, I think to that point, you know, we are fortunate that I think we have highly trained police in each of our towns. And, you know, it's hard to measure because you're not going to read of the incident that didn't occur.
That's right. Yeah.
And you're not going to hear about all of the, you know, whether it's a domestic dispute, whether it's a heroin problem, whether it's mental illness. You're not likely to read about the problem that was averted. But I can tell you that there are a whole lot of them that get averted in every one of our communities.
Any other questions? Yes?
I'm Peter Trace from Lewisboro. I'm on the school board in Lewisboro, and this, of course, is an ongoing problem. And I have been told by local police officers, by bringing dogs in unannounced to the schools, would cut down on what's going on in the schools and the distribution from the schools. So I'm wondering if there's any way that the supervisors of the towns can get together with the superintendents of the school districts and suggest a plan that you can work out together where you can bring in police dogs unannounced to school districts so that there'll be a little more attention paid by the whole community.
Peter, this is being
I'm sorry, one
discussed
second.
actively, right?
I'm sorry?
This is under active discussion.
In other words, you were already talking about bringing dogs into the schools?
Yeah, this is being, well, I'm not, but our police chief is.
Well,
Just
rather than
let me
talk
just,
about
for
stuff that's
the, for the audience,
I'm sorry?
for the TV audience, let me just repeat the question, which was about town supervisors, the possibility of town supervisors working with the schools, the possibility of bringing in police dogs unannounced to help with
Let me
the.
just, the superintendent of the school district, in our case, Ken Freeston, he's the one that would simply call up and say, I want dogs to come in, and those trained dogs are not, North Salem doesn't have those trained dogs, it would have to be the county. So it really doesn't require our involvement at all. The SRO, the officer that they have in the school can simply request that from the county. I will tell you, and this is from my experience, that the parents get very upset when you walk in the school with a dog, and they're the ones that complain.
That's too bad.
Well, they don't complain to me, they complain to the school, and that's one of the reasons, I think, why you don't see more dogs in school.
I understand that
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, you're on the school board,
Yeah,
so you would
and so I
know.
hear that, but what I'm saying is that this is a critical issue.
Absolutely.
And I would think that the law and the municipalities and the school district would override the parents' feelings about this because it's protecting their children.
Well, you're on the school board. I mean, obviously, you know what's going on there, but I would suggest everybody go to the school. The dogs find the stuff in about 3 seconds. They find it real fast.
Oh, yes. I mean, the feedback that I get is, well, we don't want to do that in our school because that'll be a bad reputation for our school. And you know, to me, that's not a good reason for not bringing dogs in. The health and the safety of the school children is the main thing, not whether the parents like it or not.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of degenerate kids selling drugs to ruin a school. I told you before, I have, well, maybe I didn't mention, I probably have 3 or 4 people in town I'd love to get rid of, and it would solve my problems in town. And then these are kids on drugs, because you can't quite catch them. I know who they are, because they're in and out of jail all the time, so they do get caught. When they're in jail, guess what? They're locked up. I have no problems. Nothing gets broken, nothing gets destroyed, nothing gets broken into. And I can tell you who they are. And I wish I could give a nice one-way ticket out to California or something like that. The same thing in the school. It doesn't take a huge number of people to have a bad effect on a school. So I can appreciate maybe why parents don't like it or why people think it's going to give the school a bad image. But you can get rid of those kids pretty fast if, in fact, you can find them, you know, guilty of something. You know, just having marijuana doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get taken out of school. So I don't know. That's the school boards have to discuss that. I think we're more than happy to help, but for me, it's the county that would bring those specialties in. It's not the town. We wouldn't have that.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Terry Palladino. I'm a 28-year resident of Bedford Hills. Thank you all for doing this. Very, very informative. My question has to do with support for small downtown businesses. I mean, it's no secret that small businesses are struggling across the country in suburban areas in particular. And I think we see evidence of that in some of our towns, in northern Westchester. I'm wondering if each of you have programs that you're putting in place to kind of support small businesses and help them develop.
Thank you. The question is about helping small businesses in our towns.
Well, I guess I'll take a crack at that. And Terry, a lot of our ability to help our hamlets and the businesses comes from organizations like the one that you're involved in, Bedford Hills Live. That's the best source of ideas, best source of community collaboration. And the town board really has got a fiduciary obligation to its residents and its businesses. And we need to evaluate fairly and dispassionately the recommendations and proposals that come from each of our hamlets. We're a little different in Bedford, that we have 3 hamlets, and we try to balance it. And we try to measure that against what our budgetary constraints are. And I can tell you that I think that our town board, based on talking to each one of my colleagues on the board, is going to be receptive to trying to do something for every one of our hamlets in terms of the recommendations that they make. Whether it be Bedford Hills Live in Bedford Hills Hamlet, whether it be Katonah Village Improvement Society and the Katonah Chamber of Commerce, or in Bedford Village, the Business Association, the Bedford Village Historic District Review Commission, Historical Society, etc., are community organizations. And then our job is to try to do the best we can to fairly weigh those, balance them, and implement them and provide funding for it in collaboration and in partnership with community organizations. For example, in Bedford Village, we're working on parking, which is the lifeblood of businesses. I expect that we're going to be doing that in every one of our hamlets. We're trying to improve our parking opportunities in every one of our hamlets by improving parking enforcement. But so much of this comes from the businesses themselves, where they can say, look, this is the problem I'm having. This is how we think that this might be addressed. Or it might be, for example, in Bedford Hills, beautification. What a great way to bring people in, to make it inviting and warm and appealing. the same kind of suggestions come from our other hamlets. So we're actively working on it. I have to thank my colleagues on the town board that are providing support for going forward with programs like that.
Is there cross-pollination between the towns, the supervisors on this issue? Because it's very similar, some of the
Yeah, you know, I
experiences.
not really.
No.
I don't talk to them about Bedford. I went to the, North Salem Chamber of Commerce, and I said, what can I do? And maybe they were surprised, but they didn't give me a lot of direction. It was interesting, the things that Chris mentioned. I mean, I have Croton Falls, I don't have the number of hamlets that you do, but I have businesses throughout town. And the other day, or actually a couple of months ago, we were sitting there talking to somebody. He came in and goes, signs are a problem. I go, why is signs a problem? He says, it takes too long, costs too much money, you have to go in front of the planning board. So I said, okay, maybe we need to do something there. It was interesting, we have a pizza place, when he puts a flag up that says pizza on it that waves, his business goes up 30%. Now, I have no idea why, I have no idea even if it's correct, but that's what he's telling me. Of course, the building inspector just went over the other day, took the sign out of the ground and handed it to him saying it's not allowed. But things like that, if it's that simple of let's come up with a simpler sign, a process to allow signs so you can notice your business better, that's something that's easy to do. In fact, we're talking about that right now. Parking and those other things, I have so much parking and we keep on going from, okay, we'll get rid of the 3-hour, go to the 2-hour, make this permit, make this, and you try to optimize it, but it's not that easy. Anyway, I don't work with these guys, but if a chamber came in and said, this is what we want, I'd be more than happy. If it's a larger chamber of commerce, I'd be more than happy. I mean, my interest, not to be parochial about it, but I don't necessarily care about Katonah or Bedford. I care about the folks in North Salem.
Sure.
Right? So,
Yeah, this is a town-by-town issue, and quite honestly, Lewisboro does not do a particularly good job on encouraging business and helping businesses. We help individual businesses when they come to us, but one of the problems is, you mentioned 3 business groups in town. We don't have that. And if business would come to us, it would be a heck of a lot easier for us to help them. I don't mean about one guy. I mean, all right, the Goldens Bridge Shopping Center has come to me, and I am working with them. But that's an exception, and I wish it was the rule.
Thank you. I saw another hand back there, I thought. Yes.
I would like to thank everybody. You thanked us for being here. Thank you for being here. Peter Krebser, a 43-year resident of Katonah, 71-year resident of Westchester County. My question has to go along the lines of mandates, mostly from White Plains, or White Plains too, but from Albany, but as well as the federal government, but more importantly, just to our town. Every time I seem to see another large tax increase of some kind, it's a mandate from somebody other than our government, local government that we have elected. And I heard on new news, good news, about how you coordinate some of your efforts together. I was just wondering, what if a lot of your groups all got together as municipalities and said, you know what, Albany, we're not going to do that. Do whatever you have to, you're not involved. It's too expensive for my people.
The question is about mandates from Albany and towns and groups getting together on that.
we get fined. I'll tell you, I mentioned a couple, and there's a couple that irk me because they're so simple to understand. One is prevailing and supplemental wage law. A town, a school, any municipality in New York State has to pay union wages and union benefits on anything we put out. We happen to be in the same group as New York City, so whatever the union rate is down there, that's what we end up paying. You know, a guy who's building, help build the town buildings up near me, his apprentice carpenter gets $15 an hour. When he walks into my building, he gets $45 an hour. I put a steel frame building up for my highway garage. I asked them how much, you know, to bolt the building together, $34,000. $82,000 is the cost to me because I had to pay union wages and union benefits. It's called the prevailing and supplemental wage law. The school has the same problem. Everything I do costs 40% more. and they don't get it in Albany, and they don't care about it because they've told me, you do not have a constituency. The MTA platform tax, everybody's heard of the payroll tax. And I know Brett's with the North Salem News and Somers News, we've had some discussions about this. My payroll tax is 10 or 12 grand, that's what it is. I pay $243,000 in platform tax. It comes from you guys, it's actually the county collects it. And Dick Lyman, Supervisor of Pound Ridge, he was laughing because I have 2 platforms, he has none. He goes, ha ha ha, I don't have any platforms. I said, well, you pay $370,000 for platform tax, and you have no platforms. How did that get on top of the local real estate taxes? Because 15, 20 years ago, somebody in Albany said, let's put it there. And they just keep on cranking it up. So Westchester collects $26 million in platform tax. 5% of the county tax is MTA platform tax. Why? And you know when you go to Albany, what they tell you is, because the guys under here, our assembly folks and senator understand it, but they need everybody else to vote to get rid of it. And they say, you know what? You deserve it. That's the comment I got from the assembly folks. You have no constituency. We don't care. You deserve that tax. Medicaid tax. There's 2 states in the United States that push it down to local property taxes, New York and North Carolina. 40% of the Westchester tax that you just paid was Medicaid. In every other state in the U.S. other than North Carolina, it's paid at the state level or the federal government level. So 45%, I'm assuming in our town, the Westchester County tax is about the same as the town tax. I don't know what it is in Bedford. But 45% of that are those 2 items that I don't know why you're paying them, right? And what they tell you when you go up there, because I'm chair of the legislative committee, you don't have a constituency, we don't care. And it's not our local guys, they get it. You know, Senator Murphy gets it, Assemblyman Buck will get it, but there's just not a real interest in getting those things to change. The prevailing wage is another problem, you know, the person here that's on the school board's nodding his head. The tri-borough agreement, right, nod his head. All those things that get dumped down from Albany, it's because somebody in a union wanted it or somebody in this place wanted it, and they have a group of people that'll go up there and vote. You know, go up there and say, yeah, we want it, and there's 100,000 votes if they pass it. And that's how we get stuck with these things. New York State is broken. Nobody likes me for saying that. New York City, I told you the Senate and the Assembly problem. New York City and Buffalo control the state of New York. They have 54% of the vote. Anything they want, they get. That's the problem with New York State. So I get very jaded when it talks about mandates. It's not even mandates. It's the folks up there. If New York City wants it and Buffalo wants it, they get it. All they have to do is block vote. They get whatever they want. Full day kindergarten, they get it. They don't care. That's the problem. I'm sorry.
No, that's
And
okay.
some of
I get
this,
very frustrated when I talk about this stuff.
and some of this is minuscule things, which could be done so easily. Warren and I both have fire departments, which also operate ambulance services. They are not allowed to bill anybody for the ambulance service.
I don't, you do. My ambulance
What do you mean?
does mine aren't
No.
mine is not part of the fire department.
Oh,
Yours
I
is,
thought it
like
was,
this.
sorry.
My guys do a soft bill. They send you a bill. You don't pay it, we don't care, but the insurance company pays it. We get $250 because your insurance company, they pay for that. The fire departments, if they have an ambulance corps, they can't soft bill. Why? Because the insurance companies in the state of New York really don't want to change the legislation.
So in Vista, where
That's
I
hundreds
have
of
a fire
thousands of dollars to
department
each town in the state.
who operates the ambulance service, they get no recompense at all for doing that.
Yeah, we make
I
about
mean-
$80,000 a year on 400 calls.
Well, all right, but
I'm just saying.
$80,000 would help.
Oh, yeah, well, it's huge.
And,
Well, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a positive that we were able to achieve. Okay? Not big stuff, but it helps.
you're not.
When the
cheating.
government efficiency plan was first rolled out, the proposal from the governor's office, they said, you're going to have to come up with new programs that show shared services and efficiencies. And a number of us said, what are you talking about? As Warren and Peter have elaborated, we've been doing this stuff for years. And you're saying you're not going to give us credit for that? We get penalized for doing it right? I had the governor's representative in my office last year when they were first talking about putting this in. And I said, what are you doing? What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. Now, did we get everything we wanted? No. But with the help of our legislators, and fortunately, and of course, by the way, the government efficiency plan doesn't apply to New York City. Okay? It's for outside of New York City. But in any event, with the help of others throughout the state that were saying the same thing, because you go upstate, you die without shared services. The counties, it's the only way they can do it. And so we went and we were at least able to get a change in the program that was ultimately adopted, which did allow for shared services as long as it was done after, I think it was what, January 1, 2010 or 11. But in any event, that's why we were able to get the credit that we were talking about for East Hudson Watershed Corporation. The point of what I'm saying is that it's enormously important that Warren Lucas and others make that trip to Albany, because we may get nowhere on prevailing wage, nowhere on the platform tax, but there's still battles that could be fought, and at least we can get some changes made that will benefit our communities. And I want to thank Warren for the work he's done in going up to Albany to represent our interests.
But this gets back to people here need to be involved, and that's why the League of Women Voters is so important. You don't know what's going on. And I say that in a very nice way. You know what's going on in the town. You have no idea what's getting dumped down on us from Albany. And I've been in one-on-one meetings, and it's, we don't care, you don't have a constituency. That's what I get told.
I would urge almost the League of Women Voters to think about putting in large type whether any candidate for the legislature or any position in Albany has already served in a municipal government. If they haven't, then I don't want them up there, whatever darn party they are. Because unless you've actually served in municipal government, you haven't got a clue what the needs are. And it is very obvious that a lot of Albany has no idea what the needs of municipalities are. Sorry, but that's what I think.
All right, we are going to end there with the questions. I'm going to give each supervisor an opportunity to briefly, if they want to sum up or anything that we didn't cover, very briefly, and then we can enjoy some refreshments, and the library closes at 9, so. And we'll go in reverse alphabetical order, so.
That's good, that'll
We're getting thrown
keep
out.
it short.
So we'll start
I
with
just
Mr.
want to
Lucas.
thank everybody for coming. It's awesome to have people that actually, first of all, will sit here for 2 hours and listen to us babble. When people are in front of us with different things that they want done, they have to listen to us, but you guys could always walk out, so I very much appreciate that. And, you know, we always think about what's happening within our community. So much of what we end up controlling in our community is because of things that happen from the outside. And I talked about Albany a lot. You need to get a little more involved in understanding of what's happening out there and how we can affect that, because by ourselves, we have the Association of Towns. There's lots of supervisors. We have the same comments about things. We have about 15 things we want to get. They don't get done because we do not have a constituency. It's the unions and the other large organizations that have 100,000 people, 50,000 people, 10,000 people, 5,000. Those are the people that get everything done in the state of New York, and it's very, very frustrating. So while we do have things in town that are very critical, I beg you to please start looking at the bigger picture and send people. It's not even sending people up to Albany. You need to go up there en masse and show up and say, this needs to be done. And they need to feel that that's important to you. Otherwise, things aren't going to change.
Mr. Parsons.
We've griped a lot up here. But in fact, I'm extremely proud of what my town board has achieved. Almost everything that's been done in town during recent years has been done using donations or volunteer labor. There is about the only things that we've done without using taxes have been roads and working on the police force. That's very hard, that's a little bit harder to get donations for. But the town park, the preserves, the library, all that is donations and volunteers. I've got here the most recent handbook to our Park and Rec department. I think it is a magnificent department, and anybody who wants to pick up one of the brochures is welcome to. What? Yes. Thank you very much for bearing with us.
Thank you. Mr. Burdick.
I want to thank the league again for putting this on, and also for you to come to listen to us and to express your views. And, you know, one of the things that I hear often, or question that people may ask me, is, you know, what do you like most about what you do? And I would have to say that what gives me the greatest satisfaction is that when you're in a local government like this, you can actually get things done. And you're able to get it done because you're able to have, we're in small enough communities where we can talk one-on-one with individual residents, with businesses, and actually be able to say, hey, that's a great idea. Let me talk to my colleagues about it and see what they think. And maybe we can't do everything that's suggested, but 9 times out of 10, we're able to do something. And that gives a great deal of gratification. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah, do go ahead and try to bang on the drum to get some changes in Albany. But don't hesitate to contact us and say, hey, I have an idea or I have a problem. Because I think that you'll find that each one of us takes very seriously that charge and that desire to try to be responsive to what you need. And I thank you again. Appreciate very much your taking time to come out for this.
Thank you. Very sincere thanks to the supervisors for sharing their unique perspective with us. Sincere thanks to all of you for asking questions, for coming out. And thank you, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Katonah Library. They're always a wonderful host. Drive home safely. Thank you for coming. Good night.
You're watching Lewisboro Community Television, Channel 20.